What are process maps and process models, and how are they used and how are they unique? Let's begin with the process map. Well, a process map is simply a depiction of an organization's processes, how they actually are versus how they should be. A process model focuses more on how they should be. Oftentimes you'll hear the word a reference map or a process reference model. So the map generally tends to be the way things actually are, where a model tends to be referent or how they should be, how it's planned. But regardless, the map presents the common activities collectively with the individual process that makes it up. So collectively, the activities are grouped by process or step towards a process throughout the organizational processes. And each process, there's identified the roles, responsibilities, standards, and decision points that make up that process. So you look at all the activities collectively that makes up an individual process, and you map those processes of how inputs flow in and outputs flow out of the organization, whatever those inputs and outputs are, and you map this along with the roles, responsibilities, standards, and decision points as part of that process. Now, generally, the process map divides these processes into the main processes that go into the value creation process, the management processes, or how higher level management oversees the individual processes that go into input and output, and then the support processes, such as support functions in the organizations, accounting, legal, finance, things of that nature. Okay, now next you look at the process model, and as we said, a process model is more referent. It tends to look at the processes as they should be, rather than actually how they are carried out. As such, it's used more for planning and analysis purposes than it is for actually visualizing what is going on. So another key aspect of the model is it tends to break down each step, each process within the organizational process flow by activities, rather than just presenting them collectively as a process and then moving on to the next process. It breaks each activity down individually so it can be analyzed and optimized as part of the process. Now, again, the focus here is on designing the ideal process for organizational efficiency, so it tends to be used by higher level management as part of the planning process. And the general components of the process model will vary, but generally what you see are the individual processes broken down by individual tasks or activities as part of that process, the flows of how these processes interact with each other throughout the information. So what happens in sequence or sequentially throughout the procedural process, what events trigger any individual process. So is it the completion of one process that triggers another, etc. What are the gateways or decision points where there can be variation along the process, maybe customization of a product or service, something of that nature. So something that's going to vary the processes that take place. Think about a product on an assembly line that may go for certain features versus other features, right? This may create some, again, divergence from the intended path along the procedural pathway. And then who are the participants in the process and what roles did they undertake as participants in that process? So this again is your process model, more referent purposes for planning, versus the process map, which is an actual map of how things are carried out, so you get a depiction of what is actually happening. And both of these, the process model and the process map, are extremely common tools used in process management.